Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's your boy Pup, coming back with week 7 of the BBR D League. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the battle tomorrow. But this week we are playing against Mario and their Montebello Mexica. After a win last week, we are now 5-1 and like pretty firmly in the playoffs. But Mario's also no different at 5-1. So you know, it's pretty funny just looking at our schedule. We're chilling at number 2 in the league behind an undefeated Who. We are playing number 3. We beat number 4. We lost to number 5, and we beat number 6. So pretty crazy, but a win here would definitely give us a nice head-to-head over half the probable playoff teams. And it just make me feel pretty confident going in there, making sure that I can compete with everyone. But it's really hard to win rematches, so hopefully we don't have to match into a lot of people that we already beat this season. Anyways, make sure you go check out Mario and all of the other BBRD League coaches, as they should be linked in the description. But let's see what their team has in store for us. Mario has a nasty sand or like physical assault team headed by Urshifu Single Strike. My bad. We played Rapid Strike last week, and it proved to be a pretty big issue in the builder, but Single Strike is a little bit easier for us looking at it. Great Tusk should be able to take on Wicked Blow pretty easily, and we also have the Galarian Moltres that resists the dual stabs. That's also, you know, still a big threat with like Sword Stance or Bulk Up plus Trailblaze like we expected last week, but I think Single Strike is definitely a bit of a fraud, especially when we do have Great Tusk on our team that basically just destroys that Pokemon. Next up is their actual biggest threat, which is going to be TERA Excadrill. They are 14-2 with 6 weeks, so you know it's going to be a huge issue. Kill leader of the league so far, and they have a ton of good TERA types in this matchup. They have Flying, which helps out with the Great Tusk, or Fairy, which also helps there. They have the Ground for big damage, and you know they should be able to hit us with Mold Breaker, hit their Orthworm. And they also have TERA Fighting in case they want to try to hit Orthworm without Mold Breaker, if they want to run something with like Sand Rush. But they have all those options, plus even more. I could see stuff like Ghost coming into me, like we've seen a ton from other coaches. But yeah, they have so many options. But they should probably go with a Mold Breaker. The only issue is that they would have a really bad speed tier versus my team. So I could see like Terra Ground plus Choice Scarf with Mold Breaker to try to hit Orthworm. But we should be decently prepared for that. It just depends on what kind of set. We have to scout out what kind of set it is, and then hopefully we'll have the answers for that. Next up is going to be Zapdos, which is a mon that you see actually pretty often on sand teams. It's a great ground and fighting resistance. So obviously walls my Great Tusk pretty dang well. Hurricane has lowered accuracy in the sand, which is pretty nice since Hurricane is really solid enemy. But I have a hard time switching into this mon no matter what, especially if they're offensive. I think the best set might just be Choice Spec, since I don't have the best special walls. Maybe like Screamtail should be able to take it. But they might just want a defensive set that might be able to take on the Great Tusk a little bit better, since Great Tusk is really solid into their team. Next up is going to be the Lycanroc Midday form, which, oh my goodness, sorry, my phone just fell. But they have a nice 112 base speed, which is really fast versus me. I have a couple Pokemon right at that 110 barrier, 111 on Screamtail. But it's just a great lead Stealth Rock Pokemon. They have like lead Focus Sash Endeavor sort of stuff with a Cellrock, being able to punish like setup from Moltres, potentially Sneasler if we are very weak, or Ogerpon. Also a Iron Moth if we haven't Terra'd, or if we're like some sort of Terra that isn't that good. But I don't have like the greatest spinner in this matchup, since Great Tusk gets super walled by Sinistra if I want to be a spinner. But who knows what they're going to do with that if they really want to break it. But I do think that it's a good bring into me, just something that I would not expect as much, especially if they want to go with like a slower setup option. Like I think the rest of their team matches up a lot better into me. Next up, like that slow sped up option that I'm talking about, is going to be Hatterene, Fairy Psychic Mon that's like really strong enemy with Calm Mind or Trick Room. Could also Healing Wish, recover their biggest threats like Excadrill back up to full, which is really annoying. They have potential for screens. I think we saw that in one of the Playmore games. I think their championship game they played against Screens Hatterene. They also have Nuzzle, which paralyzes my entire team, so they don't have a great switch in, which is annoying. But they also just hit like a truck. They have their ability Magic Bounce, which just limits me from hazard stacking them. I can't really spam any status. I can't Encore them with Screamtail if they want to set up. So, you know, if they bring this Pokemon, it can probably at least like trade 1-for-1, but Trick Room plus Calm Mind is insanely scary and can just win the game. Their next Pokemon is one of my favorites that also works super well under Trick Room, which is going to be Dragalge. They have adaptability Draco Meteor and Sludge Wave, which is incredibly good into my team. We also don't like Toxic Spikes if they choose to go more of a defensive route. I could definitely see Draco, Sludge Wave, Flip Turn plus T-Spikes as even more of a pivoting Pokemon, since it's pretty good into my Sneasler, resisting the dual stabs. It also might want to run something like Focus Blast on there to cover a great switch, which would be my Orthworm. They might just choose like spam Flip Turn to get favorable matchups versus all of my pivots, since it's really hard to switch into all of their options, and they just have a lot of good Pokemon that can take advantage of just one wrong move from me, being able to set up with like a Swords Dance Excadrill, or just being able to set up a Trick Room and destroy me with either. I think they have a ton of good slow options that they could set up Trick Room with and just destroy me. Next up, they have Sinistra, which is one of these Trick Room Pokemon. Super annoying for me to break. Scream Tail mostly stops the Calm Mind or Strength Zap shenanigans, but if they're like Mental Herb, being able to block that would be really scary. They could also be Offensive Choice Specs or like Trick Room. That's really solid onto basically everything on my team that doesn't start with an M and end with Moltres Galar, because Moltres just destroys them. I would assume this mon like comes to either be like some sort of Trick Room offensive Pokemon or a Great Tusk Wall and Spin Blocker if they want to try to hazard stack me with like the Lycanroc, which both I think are pretty annoying for me to deal with, and I think they're both really good in this game, so probably comes here. Next up is going to be Gastrodon, a great basic defensive water ground type that I'm pretty sure got access to Spikes this generation, so makes the hazard stacking with Sinistra sound really, really good. But they might use this Pokemon as another sort of Sneasler check if they don't want to do that with Dragalge, because I feel like it does pretty well. If we are able to get like poisons on them, it's really nice for me. But Dire Claw doesn't really do too much damage into them. They might just run max Fizz Def so they can eat a +2 close combat from me. But if I pivot out into like an Energy Ball, Iron Moth, or Ogerpon Cornerstone, it makes Gastrodon look pretty bad in the matchup. Second to last is going to be Chinchino, which is their fastest Pokemon on the team outside of Sandrush Excadrill, hitting a 115 base speed tier. Still slower than my fastest Pokemon, which is Sneasler. Really nice for me. But I have Great Tusk and Orthworm as physical defensive walls, so I don't think there's any real scenario where Chinchino comes, especially like a typical like Loaded Dice Technician sort of set with like Tidy Up. But I mean, I deal with it very well, especially with Orthworm, just being able to one-shot it with Body Press, and they cannot touch me at all. I am definitely scared of a late game Tidy Up sort of thing, but I do have Rocky Helmet users potentially, being both the Orthworm and Great Tusk. So if they click Tail Slap into those Pokemon, then they're just going to die on the spot. And then last but certainly not least is going to be T-Tar. Well, I mean, it's certainly not least, but it might be around there. I don't think T-Tar is good unless they want to bring it as like a rocker and get stand up for Excadrill. But they're forced to be special attacking to do any damage to Orthworm or really Great Tusk. And then their attacks shouldn't be strong enough to beat Scream Tail at all. I also have a ton of ways to beat this thing offensively, with basically every single Pokemon on my team besides the Galarian Moltres having significant stab or coverage that just straight up blows them back. So overall, they have a very, very scary team to deal with, and I anticipate them being pretty offensive to try to take advantage of bulky pivots like Screamtail, Orthworm, and Pincurchin. So I have a lot to deal with here. I also don't want to show all of my cards here because it's a potential playoff match. So I'm not going to bring like everything that would be the best in this matchup, but I'm going to try to win here because I would love to get a 1 or a 2 seed and be able to choose my opponents. So first on my team, I need an Excadrill check, obviously. I don't want to be another victim to the kill leader, so I settled on Orthworm. Obviously makes sense with the super high 145 base defense, and we are just fully invested. We have the Earth Eater ability, so they can't spam Earthquake versus our team. You might say, oh, but they have Mold Breakers, so they can actually hit us. Well, no, Uno reverse card, we have Ability Shield, so they can't do that. A little annoying that I can't hold something like a Citrus Berry or a Rocky Helmet. That would make me really strong into their team. But I think that this is what I need to do versus I'm definitely going to bring Mold Breaker into my team. I don't think the Sand Rush set makes that much sense. I am definitely afraid of TERA Fighting Drill. If they're like Adamant, Sword Stance, and Brick Break, they might be able to one-shot me. It's a roll in my favor, I think. So that would be pretty scary, or just like clicking just 2 Brick Breaks would be really solid. But Orthworm, make sure that they can't just like straight up sweep me. No matter what, they're going to have to be like some sort of mold breaker set. Just, you know, to make sure they're going to be able to do anything, even though I have the ability shield, so it doesn't do anything. But it, you know, just makes them, like, forces them to set up those sword stances and really be strong into my team. We have Body Press and Heavy Slam as great attacks into basically their entire team. Maybe not the Sinistra as much, but it's pretty solid. Coil, in case we do have setup opportunities versus a drill that really thinks that they can just run through my team with Iron Head and Earthquake and forgets about the ability shield. We also have Spikes to punish them from switching around. Next up on the team is going to be a physically defensive Great Tusk, which also does great work into drill and physically offensive Tyranitar if they want to bring that Pokemon. With max physical defense, we should be able to eat up to 2 Terra Blasts from Excadrill if they're like Terra Fairy or Terra Flying, both of which are really solid into the team. We can Rapid Spin away any hazards if they want to run like T-Spikes, Spikes, Stealth Rocks. I think they're all pretty good. So we can spin those away. We can Earthquake spam into their team, knock off items, especially on the Sinistra. We also have Roar, which doesn't help with the Hatterene since they're going to be able to magic bounce it back. I do think that they would switch out at that point, so I mean could. But we're here to potentially phase out like a Terra Flying Excadrill if they want to try to set up sword stances in my face. We also have Rocky Helmet, which lets us switch into Iron Head from that Excadrill. It also punishes Cinccino's Tail Slap. If they choose to bring it in this game, I don't think they will. But we also, you know, obviously just have this Pokemon as a Urshifu single strike check. Sorry, I cannot talk today. But we're basically able to eat up any kind of hit if it wants to go for Wicked Blow, U-turn, close combat. We just eat it all up. We chip it down, and we can get it into range for the rest of our team to be able to revenge kill it pretty easily. To round out our defensive core, we have Screamtail as the 3rd Pokemon. This Mon is the best special attacking check that we have, and I can see a lot of special offense coming to my team because we don't have the best checks for it at all. Fairy typing, make sure Dragalge can't spam Draco because it's really strong into me, although they do have Sludge Wave as well. It's kind of like a 50-50-50, which doesn't make any sense. It's really 33-33-33. Clicking either of those 2 moves or clicking Focus Blast, whether I want to switch into this Pokemon or switch into any other check on my team potentially, or obviously the Orthworm that is immune to Sludge Wave and doesn't take anything from Draco. We have Psychic Noise plus Focus Blast, which basically hits their entire team very hard. Maybe not like the Sinistra, the Zapdos, or the Gastrodon, but it really puts them into range because they're not able to heal up with Strength Sap, Roost, or Recover, respectively. We also have Encore, which helps versus some setup threats like Urshifu potentially, but not their biggest threat, which is going to be the Hatterene, since they're just going to bounce it back. And then if we get Encored into Encore, then we'd basically just lose the game on the spot, especially if they're Trick Room plus Calm Mind. We can pass Wishes to Great Tusk and Orthworm to keep those walls much healthier and stop Excadrill plus Urshifu from beating down my entire team. That's basically what this Pokemon's here for. We also have speed to outrun that Urshifu and threaten it out, although we do not have a great move into it. I mean, we do have Focus Blast, but it would be a little bit better to have Dazzling Gleam. We need Focus Blast to be able to hit the potential Drill before it tears if we want to catch it, switch into that, but also destroys the T-Tar. And then the rest of our stats are into HP and Spadef to make us as bulky as possible while passing bigger Wishes. We also have the item of Covert Cloak, which basically just means that we negate any secondary abilities from Pokemon on their team. So Nuzzle from Hatterene doesn't do anything. Discharge Para from Zapdos, we are immune to that. They're not going to freeze me with T-Tar clicking Ice Beam versus like a try to switch into Great Tusk, anything like that. It's not going to work. Nothing like that is going to work. So Screamtail, pretty nice into their special threats, but could get overwhelmed very, very easily. The first Pokemon of our offensive core, though, is going to be the Ogerpon Cornerstone. Just has a great typing. Rock plus Grass is basically unresisted. Actually, it definitely is unresisted from their team. We also have Knockoff, which is just really strong as well. We have enough speed to make sure we're able to outrun the Lycanroc and the Cinccino, because, you know, those Pokemon are probably sitting on the bench. So we're going to outspeed everything that's probably coming to this game. And if we're able to get a Swords Dance up, the other 3 moves on our team basically are probably just going to be enough to win us the game, especially if we have any like spike up or if we have any chip damage on the rest of their team. I don't think they have any Pokemon that can really switch in. Potentially max defense Hatterene can live at +2 Ivy Cudgel. We still have a raised crit chance, so we'll see what happens with that. We also don't die to 1 hit from that Pokemon anyways. But even like Sinistcha doesn't beat me down, since we can always Swords Dance to boost their Strength Sap and destroy them with knockoff. We might end up leading this Pokemon, especially if they have a really slow team, as it keeps Hatterene from Calm Minding or Trick Rooming for free, since it's a really nice lead into potential like a Rocker from my side. But it can also let me find setup opportunities versus other lead options, such as Tyranitar that might want to set up hazards, or Gastrodon that also might want to set up hazards. The second offensive mon on my team is going to be Protective Pads Sneasler. The pads keep us from getting chipped down by any Rocky Helmets on the Gastrodon, Sinistcha, Dragalge, Zapdos, whatever. But it also makes us immune to static, which is really the biggest thing. We have a speed tier that outruns everything on their team except for Sandrush, Excadrill, and then any Choice Scarfers or anything that's boosted. So it's really nice to keep that speed. We have the combination of dual stabs being Dire Claw and Close Combat that have like very, very few resists. Mostly it's that Dragalge that can never heal itself back up. So if we're able to get it chipped down and then get a +2 from Swords Dance, we can just win the entire game. Like I said, we have the speed to outrun everything on their team, so we don't need Unburden. So we can have Poison Touch plus a U-turn as our 4th move on this Pokemon to have a pivoting option, and we can catch them off guard by trying to pivot around to this Pokemon earlier in the game, and then suddenly just setting up with Swords Dance and trying to sweep their team once all those defensive walls are broken. And once that happens, then Sneasler is basically just free. Need to worry about any, Choice Scarfers or anything like that, but we can just win the game on the spot. And then last on my team, I was really up in the air between going with TERA Captain Iron Moth, which, is kind of crazy to try to leave on the bench, but we are going to this week because we eventually settled on a Galarian Moltres. We were rocking a Choice Scarf variant, so I'm going to outrun their entire team, and they have no switch into Hurricane aside from especially defensive Zapdos, who doesn't really want to take it, but they definitely don't want to take Fiery Wrath, especially if we're able to get any flinches. We do have a ton of hacks potential on this Pokemon with those confusions from Hurricane and flinches from Fire Wrath, which we might need to win this game. We're a modest set that speed creeps Adamant, Choice Scarf, Excadrill in case they do want to bring that. I think it's a real opportunity here, especially if they want to go something like Terra Ground to Mold Breaker, try to break through my entire team. But I don't really think that they would want to go to Jolly or even run max speed in general. I don't think it makes that much sense because Jolly doesn't make them outrun anything more except for like a fully speedy Great Tusk, which I don't think looks very good. But it is what it is. Last two moves on this set are going to be U-turn if we ever want to pivot out. We also have a Memento in case we ever need to get a setup opportunity for Swords Dance with Sneasler or Ogerpon versus their team. So that's about it. I really like this matchup on paper, but if they bring some unexpected Pokemon or sets, we can definitely easily lose this game. But I'm like pretty much locked for playoffs at this point, and I think Mario is as well. Maybe like we have a chance to get out if everything goes, other people's way, but I think we're pretty safe. But I feel like Mario is someone that we might have to face in the near future on our run to win the whole thing. So I can't bring everything that I really want to. But hopefully we're still going to be able to win this game, secure up like a 1 or a 2 seed, be able to choose our opponents in the playoffs when we finally get there. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying the team builders and the BBR content as a whole. Soon we're going to dive into more Wi-Fi drafts because the GWA and PWC are coming back, and then there's another secret project, all which are coming after the new year. Be sure to make sure you hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss all of that. But that's going to be it for me. Peace out.